Welcome back, everyone, to the Essence of Alexandria podcast. I'm your host, John, and I'm joined by my co host, the magnificent Megan.
What's up, guys?
Oh, it's going to be a shorter one. Real life happened, so we only had time to prepare meaningfully one topic. But it's Halloween, it's spooky season. So that means.
Ooh.
So that means we're going to discuss, are aliens demons? Dramatic pause.
Where to begin? Where to begin?
Yeah, so I think a decent place to start is the compatibility of an extraterrestrial hypothesis with Christianity. Um, and unfortunately, I got distracted this week and didn't do a refresher on on the arguments for the compatibilities. But I will link some excellent videos in the description of our podcast. So that you can go listen to them. Excellent videos by Jimmy Aiken and Cameron Bertuzzi of Capturing Christianity and StarQuest Production Network, respectively. Jimmy Aiken's probably one of my favorite podcasters. I'm a huge paranormal junkie. My parents think I'm a little crazy, and they're right. uh, but yeah, so he's got all sorts of stuff. Super fun podcast to listen to. He's very well researched, and he keeps things like pretty level headed even when he's getting into some crazier stuff, and he's actually changed my mind on a lot of things, including the compatibility of an extraterrestrial hypothesis and Christianity. Now that does not necessarily mean I believe for certain there are intelligent extraterrestrials out there. I don't at this time I don't think there are. I'm obviously open to my mind being changed, and even if intelligent extraterrestrials are real, I don't believe they're visiting Earth. We can get into that another time if all of our wonderful listeners want. So go ahead and give our podcast a like on YouTube and Rumble, and leave us some comments letting us know if you want to hear more about aliens, because I don't know. This is a topic that's always really, really interested me since I was a wee lad.
Yeah.
You had some interesting. So before we started, you actually showed me some new stuff about extraterrestrials that I hadn't heard before, or at least it might be in some of Jimmy Aiken's work, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So new to me as of right now. Regarding the church fathers, I almost said founding fathers, and some of the things they've had to say about and some of the things they've had to say about extraterrestrials.
Yeah. Well, basically, when you kind of proposed this topic, I mean, I had heard about it, and I had, I did my undergrad in at Liberty, so I had kind of some people already talked to me about this, but I hadn't ever truly dived into it
Mm-hmm.
full force. And even with this, I didn't dive into it as much as I normally would. Um, but I of course, I have a very linear kind of fashion in how I like to learn things. So I was like, well, where would be the best place to start with the church fathers? Um, so I kind of one of my favorite church fathers is Aquinas, and I like being able to go back to him. I'm a big fan of the Summa Theologica, and I actually stumbled on a paper. It's by I forgot the Marie George, and this was published by the Universidad de Navarra. So I'll go ahead and send it to you so you can go post the link.
Yeah.
Um, but basically, this paper went over his opinions that he stated in the Summa Theologica, which I have read. I just never really focused in on these parts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it discussed with him. He broke it down basically in two sections. One being he approached it philosophically, and then the other he approached theologically. His philosophical approach was kind of inconsistent. He kind of seemed to go back and forth, where he broke down philosophically the metaphysics of what it would be what would be required in order for intelligent extraterrestrial life to exist. And so he went into the um the differences between simple bodies and intelligent bodies, and he kind of broke it down about what's the requirements for a simple body versus an intelligent body. And then continuing on down through his opinions, he then started to get a little inconsistent, where he started to talk about oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cough, and I don't want to cough in everyone's ears right now. um he started getting into the soul, and this is where he kind of started to say that a soul was required for an intelligent form. But then he kind of almost backtracked in a way about a simple form having a soul, like it could potentially be a plausibility. And so because of that, his conclusion seemed to be murky at best. But then when he got into the theological stance, he made it very clear that it was nihil ad rem, which is basically insignificant. His opinion is that it is inconsequential to someone's theological or faith journey as to whether aliens exist or not, because it's not going to deter the fact that Jesus Christ died on the cross for us as an atonement for our sins, and that the only way to salvation is through him. So I found that interesting. The article also goes on to talk kind of about origin as well. And then with Augustine, he discusses that it almost appears that his opinion is that angels are aliens, that they could appear to aliens as us, because he says that angels were not left out in the first creation of things, but are signified by the name heaven or even light. And so by his expressing, like, hitting on that, he kind of implies that he believes that lights that we see in the sky, that people interpret as aliens or UFOs or whatever, could be seen as angels.
That's
So
that's interesting. Have you read C.S. Lewis's space trilogy? That Out of the Silent Planet. I forget the first. I think the first one's Out of the Silent Planet, Paralandra, and That Hideous Strength.
I think I had to read it for, what did I have to read it for?
Mm.
I'm trying to think of just out loud.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember particularly if I did.
Do you remember the Eldila? I might be. I have no idea how most people pronounce that. Because it's a book and people have various pronunciations.
Yeah.
The way that
No, I don't.
Lewis. Okay, they're basically like they were like the angels. It was like
Mm-hmm.
the own, or I think it was I think Eldila was the Martian word for angels, and they were
Okay.
just like a luminous presence
Mm-hmm.
until you get to like Paralandra, which Paralandra is really good. I quite liked it. Um, that Hideous Strength is borderline a book of prophecy.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
If you
that
want to,
that'll
if
definitely be interesting.
it's also a book that that can be read standalone. Paralandra you can't really read standalone. You kind of
Mm-hmm.
have to read it in conjunction with Out of the Silent Planet. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
Well, that sounds interesting.
yeah, it's really good. The lights thing, I think that a lot of Saint Augustine's words there, uh, I think would confirm a lot of the biases of the pro aliens are in fact demons hypothesis people, which we'll unpack
Right.
that a little more. Um, yeah, I'm personally not bothered by the extraterrestrial hypothesis. Some of the common counter arguments are, well, did Jesus have to die for each species?
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily like that. I think that's the most common theological objection is if there is other intelligent life is like, well, would Jesus have to die for each intelligent species? Um, the response to that is I mean, maybe he did. We don't know. It's not our place because we just don't know anything about them if they are real. So maybe I don't see that as a problem. Um,
I kind of do. I
hmm
mean, it, to say that Jesus didn't have to die for them would imply that they didn't have sin nature,
Yeah, well, it's
which means
possible they
that
might not be fallen.
I mean, it is true. But would that? I mean, I guess it wouldn't
hmm
lessen Jesus's sacrifice if they didn't, if that alien race didn't have sin nature.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know.
That's just one of the.
I
That's just
think
one of the
you're right. It
possible
it
outs to
leaves.
the. Sorry.
Yeah. No, no, that's fine. I can see your point, but I can also
hmm
see that I think that is something that would trip a lot of people up justifiably, because
Yeah.
then you ask the question of like, well, then Jesus, they don't need Jesus at all then, because if they don't have sin nature, then they didn't need
hmm
his atonement and his sacrifice, and you know, there's just that kind of openness about it.
Well, so I would counter with they still need Jesus, just not in the way we need Jesus, because if they're not fallen, they probably have a relationship with the triune God in a way that we don't now, but will on the other side of eternity. They're just blessed to have it now.
Correct, but really, then why would they? Then let's ask the question: why would they
hmm
need Jesus? They wouldn't necessarily need him. Sure, they could have a relationship with him, but there's no, you know what I'm saying?
Well, because a morally perfect created being will be in will be in perfect relationship with God.
Hmm.
Um, I think we're getting hung up on the word need because like we
Yeah, I
need
mean that's
Jesus
fair.
to be our savior, but
Hmm.
once we're on the other side of eternity, we'll need him to be our object of worship.
I mean, then that's
And
true.
our whole existence is still contingent on God.
Of
So
course,
it
yeah.
theirs. So the idea that they wouldn't need Jesus, and God, I don't think that follows. And they might be fallen, and if they are fallen, there's two possibilities. One, God does play out the same story for them as He does us. Two, He plays out a different one for them because they might have a completely different um, uh, sort of character to us or psychology to us that we can't understand.
Hmm.
Um, and the nature of their fall might be different than the nature of our fall. And then lastly, just his sacrifice on earth might be enough.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of outs, I think, to the strong theological objections. I'm gonna let Jimmy Aiken cover the scientific ones. I'm gonna leave that in the uh, podcast or in the links below because there's a lot. It's kind of hard to
Yeah.
unpack.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Um. Okay, so kind of segueing into
hmm
what we wanted to talk about with
Answering the real
aliens.
question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no. What answering the real question?
Oh,
What's up?
are aliens demons?
Uh, well, I mean, the church fathers didn't seem to necessarily always agree, but they seem to
hmm
believe that aliens in our knowledge, our understanding of them, could be both angels and demons,
hmm
because Augustine here was talking about how angels could be described in scripture as lights,
Right.
which, as we know, that people have said that when they've had UFO sightings, lights. And then some people have said that demons can be, which I've seen people describe. There's a verse in Jude in particular that discusses. It's in Jude 6. Actually, that's just the, yeah. Jude 6 says, "And angels who did not keep their own domain but abandoned their proper abode, he has kept in eternal bonds under darkness for the judgment of the great day." So that just because there's some demons that were kept in prison, there are still those running around free, under, with Satan's purpose, and that could be
Yeah.
to pull people away from God, and part of that can be appearing as aliens to
hmm
make people believe that there's no God and that it's just extraterrestrial life. So
Yeah.
it's a possibility, I think.
Yeah, so I'm gonna step back a little bit and kind of m- make a delineation of what, or I guess kind of explain what people mean when they say alien are aliens demons, and a lot of that is they're not referring to um, if intelligent life on other planets exists, are those demons? Because that that's not what anybody's saying. But it's saying the encounters that people have here on Earth with things that they believe are aliens, are those actually demons?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which really, really interesting. The argument basically goes well, so some of it comes from a movement called the oh, what were they called? It was this group of people in I think it was the 50s and 60s who were claiming to be like people chosen by the extraterrestrials to bring a message of peace and hope and love um, to humanity, right? They're like, oh, the aliens are coming to help us. And what was the name of the organization or the group? I can't remember. It's really, my brain's all fuzzy on it.
You said 50s and 60s.
Yeah, it was like a single word, and it's like were they the, it was literally, I was literally, Jimmy Aiken covered this exact same topic for his episode, not Friday after releasing, or not the Friday before releasing this video, but um, the one before that, the Friday before. He released it Friday the 20th of October, and he talked about them. And this group of people basically believed that they were in contact with aliens, and the aliens were coming to help us, and they're gonna bring world peace and all this nonsense. And so much of the teachings that these people were claiming were from the aliens is just like new age nonsense. They're
Mm-hmm.
they were like, "Oh, we have met Jesus, and he's not the son of God. He's an alien. He's one of what's known in UFO lore as the Nordics, which
Mm-hmm.
are is one of my favorite. I'm gonna have to do a whole episode just unpacking, like going through UFO lore and the different kinds of aliens and unpacking that all, because it's so goofy and it's so much fun. But the Nordics are like aliens, but they look like regular people from Scandinavia. That's it. That's the alien. It's that. That's how creative these people got. It's like, so what are? Oh, you encountered an alien from outer space. What did it look like? Did it have like wings and fangs and scales? Nah, it looked like my Swedish roommate in college. What?
People are wild, man. Some of the
Yeah,
stuff that they come up
yeah.
with.
Psychedelic drugs will do that to you. Um,
Mm.
but a lot of the teachings of those people and what they claimed the aliens were bringing to Earth was very, very new age. So it was like, oh, all paths lead to like enlightenment. Jesus wasn't really the son, the divine son of God, part of the triune God. He is an alien. Also,
Yeah.
please don't point out my partialism heresy. The Trinity's complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just using common language. A member of the Trinity. There we go. That's the correct terminology.
I think I found it. It's is it called Rialism?
Ugh.
Rialism.
No, it's a different one. Um.
Well, it is a UFO religion
Mhm.
founded in 1970s France by Claude. Oh boy, my last name is French, and I'm gonna butcher this. Bourguignon, Bourguignon, something like that.
I'm aware of the Rallians,
Right, right.
but I've forgotten about a good bit about them.
Funny.
Um.
Yeah, because it's saying some of the same stuff that you were talking about, which is among them are the Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad,
Mhm.
with Rael himself, the 40th and final prophet. So it's like basically, it claims that throughout history, that Elohim,
Mhm.
funny that they took a lot of elements of Judaism,
Mm-hmm.
um, Elohim have created 40 Elohim human hybrids who have served as prophets, preparing humanity for news about their origins. This is interesting. Okay.
It's just so
Ooh,
wacky.
ooh, buddy. Po- An Episcopal polity is a hierarchical form of church. Oh, okay. Oh, interesting. Sorry, that was interesting.
No,
Their
it's like,
headquarters is in Geneva, Switzerland, though.
all of the word, all of my like least favorite things come out of Geneva, Switzerland. Like you have John Calvin, the Geneva Convention, and now the Rallians.
uh, this is wacky, man.
Oh, it's
Whoa.
you UFO stuff. Like if you need to go down a rabbit hole, just like start looking at UFO lore. And I say lore
Yeah.
because like I'm like I like they have like there's this like ad hoc like collective fiction that a lot of UFO people believe. Um and they
Yeah.
kind of like pretend that it's all theory. So like there's obviously a lot of discontinuity, but they're like, yeah, so like the Nordics are like the peaceful aliens and they're trying to help us, and then you have like the reptilians and they're like trying to like hurt us, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's just silly. Anyway, back to answering the questions. Are what people who claim to be encountering aliens are those encounters actually demonic? And some of the evidence for that that's posited is well, one big thing is the hostility to a little, I'm gonna Orthodox, but I mean little Orthodox, so not Eastern Orthodox, but like the kind of generally accepted gospel among among Christians, the stuff that we all universally agree on. There's a strong objection to that. That's a big one, or I shouldn't say objection, more as a uh, it's New Age. It's almost universal New Age message. Um, this is one Jimmy Akin goes over in great detail in his podcast. That the abduction events are scary and harmful to people. Um, and then lastly, and this is the one that you're lucky to listen to our podcast because Jimmy Akin, for all his wonderful research, couldn't actually find any evidence for this outside of like just rumor. I've got a little bit, not too much, but I got a little teaser, and I'm gonna see if I can get in touch with Mr. Akin and talk about it with him. But the last piece of evidence is that a lot of people claim abduction encounters or alleged abduction encounters can be halted in progress, or if it's a recurring thing, can be halted by invoking the name of Christ.
Right.
Which to me, that's the strong, like, I an that I think is the strongest piece of evidence. If you have documentation of these alien abduction encounters being halted by invoking the name of Christ. The scary one doesn't fly for me because I don't know, snakes, like people think snakes are scary. Like
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I was afraid to be outside at the campgrounds alone. That's not like being outside at the campgrounds alone. It's probably not the safest thing for a little kid. Well, at the campgrounds I was at, it was pretty safe because it was a. Anyway, I'm digressing. Yeah, being scared just because you're scared doesn't mean demons. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, as for the New Age stuff, the movement that I'm thinking of, which I can't remember the name of, a lot of those were found out to be fraudsters and hoaxsters, and I'm sure there's a lot of that with the Rallians too. But I'd have to look into them again.
Well, it seemed like, I mean, really, honestly, of reading into doing a rough overview, it seemed like they just took a lot. It's like a potluck of religions.
Mm-hmm.
Like most other New Age movements, it's taking a bit of this, taking a bit of that, whatever sounds good, and then throwing it together to,
So it sounds like they're fans of religious studies and Steven Spielberg.
yes, it's like religious fan fiction for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what their thing is. But yeah, it doesn't seem legit. I mean, of course, it doesn't. It just isn't legitimate. I mean,
No.
anytime you have to pull, I don't want to. I don't want to say that you can't pull different things, but I think that in this sense, it literally is so just inconceivable that it just doesn't. It doesn't have any merit at all.
Yeah.
I would take one look at that and be like, nah, no, we're good. So,
Yeah, because like with the sort of Raleigh like New Age stuff, and the other group, they were like the contactees or something
yeah,
along
the
those lines.
abductees,
What's that?
the abductees.
The group called themselves like the contactees or something like that. That's the closest word I can remember. But like
Yeah, because
abduct.
I
Sorry.
did some research too, and it just seemed like it was like I saw abductee a lot,
Mm.
kind of like,
Yeah, those would be people that believe they are abduction victims. Um,
mm-hmm,
so that that's definitely um that's definitely a good term for them. But yeah, the contactees, I actually think that might be what they were called. The people that believe they were being contacted by the aliens, the New Agers. In order for
mm,
for their what they're saying to be true, you basically have to without any evidence of their interpretation, you have to
mm-hmm,
completely rewrite all of the various holy books of like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, so on and so forth. Like you have to completely rewrite the New Testament, the Quran, the Old Testament, the Talmud, whatever, just to like make it fit in their framework. And then you have to ignore or you have to ignore the law of non-contradiction.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that stuff is out.
I think you're right too. Just doing a little bit of a digging. It's on Wikipedia, but contactees are persons who claim to have experienced contact with extraterrestrials. Some claimed ongoing encounters, while others claim to have had as few as a single encounter. Weird. Um, Greatest notoriety from the late 1940s to the late 1950s.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's along the time frame that you're saying. So this is
Yeah.
probably what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, but yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them were later discovered to be hoaxers, which for a lot of for a lot of sort of alien encounters are actually demonic people. When they're doing that research, a lot of them will unfortunately just take the contactees at their word,
Mm-hmm.
um, even though they weren't telling the truth. So
Yeah.
that's not very helpful. However, as for the um, halting the the abduction encounters by invoking the name of Christ, there was a book I read when I was in my early 20s called Alien Intrusion, UFOs and the Evolution Connection, which I'm not a young Earth creationist anymore. The author of that book is. That's kind of a side theme about it, but in a chapter where he brings that up, he reads out one anecdote where a guy was hanging out in Florida, saw some lights in the sky, and then while he was sleeping, he woke up by like a malevolent presence, and felt that he was being lifted off his bed, and he got scared and invoked the name of Christ, and immediately all stopped. Right,
Mm-hmm.
which a aversion to the holy, to God incarnate is a pretty good indicator of the demonic. Now, in Jimmy Akin's podcast, he said he couldn't find any sources on that. I have found, thanks to that book, an organization called CE4 Research Group. They don't seem to have done anything since 2014 at the latest. But they claim to have 400 testimonials of incidences of alien abduction type encounters being halted by invoking the name of Christ. And they have a good selection. I'll link their website in the description below. But they have a good selection of written and audio testimonials for you to listen to. I sampled some. I have this like list. This list of testimonies and all that. It's definitely interesting, and it is, I think, more substantive than just a lot of the rumors that Mr. Aiken had heard. But I also have some problems with it. So I can't find anywhere on their website's a little confusing. I can't find anywhere the methodology they used to go over the testimonials and verify that these people are in fact telling the truth. And that and giving like the evidence that these people sincerely had these encounters and that they were halted by invoking the name of Christ. However, 400's a lot. And while it's certainly possible that a lot of these might have, might be sincere in what they think is happening and that they believed they were having some sort of abduction encounter and then they halted it by invoking the name of Christ. But really what it is they were having a dream, and in their dream they invoked the name of Christ, and their subconscious like filled in that blank. That's absolutely possible. With 400 testimonials, that says to me there's enough here to keep digging and keep looking into it. So that's something I'd love to do.
Yeah, it also brings up a good question. I mean, can we be attacked in our sleep? Is it not real just because it's happening in our subconscious? Like, there's that kind of ambiguity too. Like, we don't know fully to the extent of, spiritual warfare can happen at any time. So it's one of those things too that maybe it was something, it wasn't corporeal, it was incorporeal, but it still was happening. We don't know. There's still a lot of unanswered things that we don't know that happen.
Yeah.
But it's interesting for sure. Like you, I researched. I went into a couple of those stories, and like you said, it's very much anecdotal. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of testing of the veracity of these stories.
Yeah.
But that's it's not. It's the same as the stories of people who have said that they have seen aliens, and it's the same kind of thing where it's anecdotal, and these kinds of things can get very tense because people are very adamant about what they've experienced and what they've seen. And I think the best thing that we can do is, like you said, 400 is a big number. I mean, the more it happens, the more it's talked about, the more
let's say
it lends credence to it.
Yeah. Well, because we can say, like, let's say 90% of those testimonials are not good. They're bad. That's still 40 people that had some kind of entity attacked them that they believed was an extraterrestrial, and they halted the attack by invoking the name of Christ. That's even just 40 is actually not. That's not enough evidence to say anything conclusive. But that's definitely enough to say, hey, we should look into this. Now, part of the problem with anything paranormal and like trying to do good, like real research using the scientific method, we live in a post-enlightenment society that kind of a priori dismisses anything strange and outside the realm of normal experience. So there's already a large bias against the UFO community and the UFO researchers. Some of that I think is justified. because they can
Mm-hmm.
get a little silly. But I think sometimes, like, hey, we should look into this more, maybe. Like, maybe there is, in fact, something here. So I thought that was really interesting. And I thought, hey, this would be a fun topic. It's Halloween. It's a little spooky. It's the time of year for that.
Right. Well, it kind of it was a good topic too because just recently in July, there was that whole story about how the U.S. recovered non-human
Mm-hmm.
remains from a UFO crash sites, and then what government was it that displayed the alien remain? Was that Mexico?
Yeah. So I actually fairly familiar with both of those incidents. So the U.S. thing is a high level analyst of some sort. I forget his exact position. I think he was Air Force, and then he was working as some kind of he was working as like I think a contractor for the DoD or something. Don't
Mm-hmm.
don't take what I'm saying about his occupation too seriously because I can't remember the exact what it was. But he was working really closely with the Air Force, and he got a lot of documents about the United States getting recovered what he described as he used the word biologics, which is to say organisms that he believed were the pilots of craft recovered by the United States military. Now here's kind of the hitch that a lot of people, especially in the disclosure movement, which the disclosure movement is a movement of UFO believers that believe the US has all the alien tech and is someday going to disclose it, right? Disclose that they've had it all along and they're finally going to tell us the truth when the public's ready. It's the disclosure movement. Much to their chagrin, the United States has actually done this before, where they've l- let out they find an official or somebody that's working alongside the government in an official capacity that's a little bit gullible, and they go, "Hey, do you want to know a secret about aliens? The United States totally has alien tech. We've got big scary alien tech. We've got big scary alien tech that if it went public, that our enemies would know. We have big scary alien tech, or we have tech that's so advanced that it can mimic what we would expect alien tech to be like." Um,
Right.
I'll try and find the Jimmy Akins podcast. I'm sorry I'm bringing him up a lot. He's just like my go-to for like good paranormal podcasts that aren't totally schizo and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But he goes over that. This happened in, I think, the 70s. There was a guy that was a UFO whistleblower, but he was actually just the victim of a United States Air Force disinformation campaign. Like he had this one agent that was just lying to him the whole time. And
Mm-hmm.
that agent, like, after it was all said and done, he's like, yeah, I felt really bad about it because he was like a good dude, and I'm just like feeding him all this horrible information and making him go crazy, thinking that there's an alien invasion coming and that the United States isn't going to do anything to stop it or whatever. And it was
Oh.
all just so that our enemies, it's the Cold War, 70s, 80s, it's the Cold War. It was all just so that the Russians and the Chinese would be afraid of the kind of technology the US has in its possession, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you get David Grush now, where everything's heating up. We've got a looming potential war with Russia and China. And here comes David Grush. Where does he get his information? Documents from the United States Air Force. Where have we seen this before?
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that is, I'm not going to say that is because it's even though it's the probability is vanishingly small. I don't think it's impossible
Yeah.
that the documents are exactly what Grush believes they are. I just think it's unlikely. I don't think Grush is a liar. I think he sincerely believes that these in the veracity of these documents. As for the alien bodies in Mexico, yeah, that was a known prankster who has tried to show those exact same bodies off before, and I think they're like paper mache or something. Like they are just an arts. They're what everyone who saw them, like everyone who saw them, their first instinct was like, nah, it's paper mache. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly what
Well,
they were.
it was basically the Mexican Navy's Scientific Institute for Health did 3 studies, and they said there's
Mm-hmm.
no evidence of any assembly or manipulation of the skulls.
Mm-hmm.
But then the Peruvian Attorney General's office had done um, a an investigation into these bodies years earlier because they were actually supposed to be discovered in Peru. And so apparently they said that it was creations made of animal and human bones joined together with synthetic glue. These in turn were covered with a mixture of plant fibers and synthetic glue to simulate a type of skin. So it seems weird that recently the Mexican Navy Scientific Institute for Health is trying to kind of go against what the Peruvian, legal medicine and forensic sciences institute found out, but I don't know. Yeah, it to me it looks fake, and it seems like there is some contradictory opinions about what these are, but I agree. I think more than
Yeah.
likely they're fake too.
No, I don't believe they're real. Because I think what you're saying about the Peruvian that happened before Mexico. They're
Yes,
like, yeah,
that's
no,
they.
it's
Yeah, they
fake.
had found it, but I think maybe the question is, then why would Masan, who's the guy, why would he show that off to? I mean, what would be the point of that?
I don't know. He's
I don't
trying to
know.
get somebody to believe they're aliens.
I guess so, but I mean, like I don't know. It's just weird to me.
Maybe he's trying to sell them. Like it could literally be a profit motive. Like he's just like, because if I had in my possession alien corpses,
Mm-hmm.
I would be going through all of like the back channels for like illicit art dealing, like illicit fine art
Mm-hmm.
dealing, and I'd be like, "Yo, check this out. I got an actual alien corpse.
Yeah.
I want a cool 2 billion for this bad mamma jamma." And then I
Yeah.
would probably get my cool 2 billion because, bro, I got an alien corpse.
Yeah. Although I will say, I will note that there was an interesting point too that they
Mm-hmm.
did do a carbon 14 analysis of the bodies, and that
Mm-hmm.
they did discover that they had been buried for 1,000 years in diatomaceous earth.
Ah.
So, which is apparently a type of algae that does not allow bacteria or
Mm-hmm.
fungi to grow. Um, I would want to, I guess, have the veracity of that test checked.
Yeah.
But it was conducted by the National Autonomous University of Mexico, so UNAM.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I find that interesting. But
I would. Yeah, that is. I don't know how. One, I don't know why. So you're saying they did carbon dating and discovered that it was in diatomaceous earth?
right, well, they did carbon dating of the bodies, and I guess
Okay.
discovered that they were 1,000 years old. So that the
Okay.
claim that they were 1,000 years old in Peru was, according to this test, true.
Mm-hmm.
But if it was falsified, then
Right.
how would that? You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
Like
excuse
it
me.
would. It doesn't make sense that the carbon 14 analysis would come back like that. So I
Yeah.
would want to double, like a second opinion on it, like another test ran.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I did find that interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely some plausible explanations, but without having any lab equipment, without knowing how to
Yeah.
operate that lab equipment, um,
Yeah.
and being able to double check for myself, I wouldn't know. I still, it's not an alien. I don't believe it's an alien. The guy is like a known fraudster, is my understanding. So,
Mm.
all right, well that is a great place to wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry we only did one topic today. We got a full length out of it.
You did.
Yeah. But Megan and I both just had real life happen and in between recordings. So thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment, especially if you watch or rather listen on YouTube. YouTube's algorithm is kind of notoriously like suppressive, especially for anyone that's not in line with their political ideology. So we'd really appreciate that and have a blessed day.